The rain had been falling for 9 straight days on the hills of Okinawa. It turned the ground into thick red mud that swallowed everything: boots, helmets, rifles, even the names of the men who fell there. In a narrow trench, Private Kenji Sato sat with his back against the damp wall, holding a dented canteen with shaking hands. He was only 20, but his eyes carried the weight of someone twice that. The air was heavy, part earth, part death. Somewhere up the slope, a wounded soldier called for water. No one moved. They all knew. If you stood up, you died. Kenji hadn't eaten in days. The supply lines were gone. They lived off rainwater and silence. A few still whispered about honor, about duty to the emperor. Most just stared at the mud, too tired to believe in anything. Every night the bombardments came again. Shells screamed across the sky, shaking the hills like thunder from below. Each explosion lit up the trench for a heartbeat, showing faces that looked more like ghosts than men. From somewhere down the trench, a young soldier began to sing. A boy, barely 16. His voice was weak, but steady. A song from northern Japan. A lullaby Kenji's mother used to sing. Even if the flowers fall, their scent will remain. The words floated through the mist like a memory. Kenji closed his eyes. For a moment, he wasn't in Okinawa. He was home, under the plum tree, watching blossoms fall into the garden. He could almost smell the rice on his mother's stove. Then the song ended, and the world went grey again. At dawn, new orders arrived. Hold the ridge at all costs. There were barely 20 men left, with little ammo. No food, no hope. The commander said only 3 words. For the emperor. No one replied. They simply nodded and waited. When the attack came, it came like a storm. American artillery thundered across the valley, tearing the ridge apart. Kenji fired until his rifle jammed, then crawled into a crater as the ground shook beneath him. He saw the singing boy lying beside the trench, hand outstretched toward the sky. By evening, it was over. The ridge was gone, flattened, silent. Kenji sat among the ruins, his ears ringing, his hands shaking. Once, they had held a weapon. Once, they had held a future. Now they held nothing at all. When the rain returned, it washed the blood into the earth. Kenji stumbled down the slope, past broken helmets, torn flags, faces he no longer recognized. At a small stream, he knelt to drink. The water tasted of metal and mud, but it was life. For the first time in months, he cried, not for his comrades, not even for himself, but for everything the war had taken, for the songs that would never be sung again. He remembered his father's last words. A man's duty is to die well. But kneeling there, beneath the grey sky, Kenji understood something else, that it takes even more courage to live. When dawn broke, he saw the sea glimmering in the distance. He dropped his rifle into the mud and walked toward the sound of the waves. The wind carried that familiar tune, faint but clear. Even if the flowers fall, their scent will remain. Years later, Kenji returned to Okinawa. The hills were green again, the scars of war softened by time. He found the place where his trench once was, and laid a branch of plum blossoms there. He whispered the song once more, not asking for forgiveness, only hoping that somewhere, the scent of fallen flowers still lingered. Subscribe to WW2 Repository for more emotional and true-to-life stories from World War II.